Hello, and welcome to the Edifice of Trust podcast. The Edifice of Trust podcast is a thoughtful discussion of today's current events from the perspective of America's founding principles. Hello, everyone. Reality is beginning to replace euphoria in the Middle East and around the world about the ceasefire in Gaza and the hostage release by Hamas. Following the initial ceasefire announcement, President Trump flew to Israel to speak to the Israeli parliament, declaring, quote, "And as the dust settles, the smoke fades, the debris is removed, and the ashes cleaned from the air, the day that breaks on a region transformed and a beautiful and a much brighter future appears suddenly within your reach. This is now a very exciting time for Israel and the entire Middle East, because all across the Middle East, the forces of chaos, terror, and ruin that have plagued the region for decades now stand weakened, isolated, and defeated," unquote. It would be wonderful if the path to that beautiful and much brighter future was clear. But the reality is that many obstacles stand in the way of that future. And one of the principal obstacles came to the forefront as Hamas uses the pullback of the Israeli Defense Forces to reestablish control in the newly vacated areas. This is being done through public executions of militias and family forces that had sprung up as Hamas retreated from the advances of the IDF. The motives behind these atrocities is clear. Hamas does not want peace. It has never wanted peace. Hamas wants power and will murder and kill anyone who opposes them. The New York Post reports that pro-Palestinian groups, leftist organizations, and democratic socialists in America have been largely quiet about the ceasefire. A ceasefire that appears as an Israeli victory and a Trump diplomatic triumph falls outside their anti-Semitic and Trump derangement belief system. The goals of Hamas and the leftists remain the same: the destruction of Israel. The public executions by Hamas are just the first step in the terrorist group's reestablishment of its control over Gaza, a goal that would forestall the bright future that President Trump so proudly proclaimed. But this ceasefire seems different. After his speech to the Knesset, President Trump flew to Sharm el-Sheikh to join more than 20 other world leaders in signing the first phase of the ceasefire agreement. The group included the usual montage of European leaders who did nothing to bring about the ceasefire and had actually undermined American efforts by prematurely recognizing a Palestinian state. But also signing the agreement were representatives from Qatar, Egypt, Jordan, the United Arab Emirates, and Turkey. A peacekeeping force is also being contemplated that would include American, European, and regional forces. The participation of Arab and other Muslim countries, such as Turkey and Indonesia, are critical for the conversion of the ceasefire into a true peace for the region. Hamas had been supported not only by Iran, but also by other groups in the region, such as the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, that was smuggling weapons under the border, and Qatar, that was financing the purchase of those weapons as well as the pay of the Hamas soldiers. Cutting off the critical sources of supply will cripple the ability of Hamas to reconstitute its forces in order to continue the war to destroy Israel. The next phase of the ceasefire is critical: disarming Hamas to eliminate the weapons they currently have. This will not be easy. The public execution of opponents by Hamas is proof that they have not relinquished the use of deadly force and terror to achieve their goals. Already, President Trump is saying that terrorist violence in Gaza must stop, or he will, quote, "go in and kill them," unquote. This was the entire goal, not only of Hamas, but of leftists around the globe. They demanded a ceasefire so that Hamas could regroup, rearm, and continue the fight to destroy Israel. This is not a bright future. The goal of Hamas is to destroy Israel, the sole outpost of Western civilization in the Middle East. It is also the goal of the leftists around the globe to not only destroy Israel, but to undermine Western civilization itself. This is why leftists support the Palestinian movement in the first place. Peace would be a victory for the West. To the left, the ceasefire is merely a setback in a long war against the West. The protesters on U.S. campuses and London streets do not seek peace and freedom. There was no freedom of speech in Gaza prior to October 7th, and there will be no freedom of speech in Gaza in the future if Hamas has its way. When so-called democratic socialist Zoran Mamdani chokes and gags before condemning the public executions by Hamas, he is giving you a preview of the future he is preparing for America. Ask your leftist friends, if they are actually friends, to explain how support for these terrorists will advance the cause of peace and justice in the future. Ask them how their leftist ideologies will make our lives better, and not like Gaza under Hamas. Thanks for watching. Links to source material used in preparing this podcast can be found on my website, www.edificeoftrust.com.